Hello students, Jinalisha welcomes you all on behalf of Saraswat International Academy. Today we will begin with the next part of the chapter Biomolecules. Students, in the previous lecture we have studied regarding the lipids. In the lipids, I forget explaining one topic, that is the importance of the lipids. So today first of all we will begin with the importance of the lipid, and then we will continue with the next biomolecule, that is a carbohydrate. So first of all students, the biological importance of lipids. How are lipids useful to human beings or to living organisms? Lipids, they liberate large amount of energy. So basically students, we get the energy through the food we eat. So those energy rich components are carbohydrate, proteins and lipids. So lipid is one of the energy liberating component. The energy released is more than double the amount of energy released during the respiration of carbohydrates. Respiration is a process through which the energy is released. So अपनी body में energy rich components जो है, they are proteins, lipids and carbohydrates. So the maximum amount of energy, it is released by the lipids. So the energy released by lipids is more than double the amount of the energy released by the carbohydrates. Being insoluble in water, it is stored in the body as reserved food in the form of fats and oils, which can be utilized through metabolic process as and when required. Now we know that lipids, they are insoluble in water. They are soluble in the organic solvent. So as the lipids are insoluble in water, they can be stored in our body as a reserve food. यानी extra lipids जो होते हैं वो अपनी body में store कर सकते हैं. That storage, it occurs in the forms of fats and oils, and through the various metabolic reactions, these stored fats and oils can be used whenever it is required by the body. The next importance is they form the insulating layer. They act as the insulators. कैसे? So there is a myelin sheath which is found around the nerve fiber. This myelin sheath, it consists of the lipid which prevents the passage of the nerve impulses in the adjacent nerve fibers. Okay, so nerve fibers का काम है conduction of nerve impulse. So ये nerve fibers के surrounding myelin sheath होती है. This myelin sheath is made up of the lipids. This myelin sheath does not allow the message to pass into the adjacent nerve fibers. Another importance as an insulating layer is the subcutaneous fat layer under the skin. It maintains the body temperature and body structure. So subcutaneous, sub is under the skin, cutaneous is the skin. So skin के नीचे fat का layer होता है. This fat layer, it maintains the body temperature as well as it maintains the body structure. Lipids such as wax, they form a protective layer on the outer surface of the aerial plant organs. Certain aerial plant organs, they have the layer of the fat surrounding them which act as the protective layer. Next importance is they act as a solvent for fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E and K. मेनली जो वाइटामिन्स का क्लासिफिकेशन होता है वो दो बेसिस पे होता है. वन इज फैट सोल्यूबल वाइटामिन्स एंड अनदर वन इज अ वाटर सोल्यूबल. Except for the vitamin B and C, all the other vitamins, that is A, D, E and K, these all vitamins, they are soluble in lipids. So lipids, they act as the solvent for the fat soluble vitamins. It is also the structural component of the cell organelles. Cell organelles का structure भी lipid से बना है. Plasma membrane and the membrane of the organelles, they are made up of the phospholipid. See students, these are the certain structures of the fats and oils which are given in your book. This is a fatty acid called as the palmitic acid. Palmitic acid consists of how many carbon? You can see 14 plus 1, 15 plus 1, 16. This is a glycerol which consists of 3 carbon and 3 OH group. This is a triglyceride where there are 3 fatty acids molecule. This is 1, this is 2 and this is the another one. and these fatty acids molecules are joined by the ester bond. We have studied in detail the formation of a triglyceride. This is an example of the phospholipid. The name of that phospholipid is lecithin. Phospholipid, it is a type of the conjugated lipid कि जिसमें lipid component के अलावा non lipid component होता है, and that non lipid component is the phosphate group. And this is a diagram or structure of the cholesterol, which is a derived lipid or form of the steroid. So these are the examples of various fats and oils. So that is regarding the biological importance of carbohydrates, of lipids. Now let us begin with the next biomolecule, that is the carbohydrates. So these carbohydrates, they are also called as the saccharides. It is derived from the Greek word which means sugar. How can we define carbohydrates? They are defined as polyhydroxyaldehyde or ketone. Poly means many, hydroxy means OH group. So there are many OH group along with a aldehyde or a ketone group. That is, they contain hydroxyl or alcoholic group. The formula for that group is the OH group. So they contain the OH groups besides the carbonyl group C double bond O. The C double bond O group is called as the carbonyl. Now ये C double bond O के साथ एक H अटैच हो जाएगा तो वो अल्डिहाइड बन जाएगा, एंड सिर्फ C double bond O हो तो इसको हम बोलते हैं कीटोन ग्रुप. सो कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स कंटेन अल्डिहाइड और कीटोन ग्रुप जिसके साथ बहुत सारे OH group will be attached. Structurally, they are composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen atoms. The ratio of hydrogen to oxygen is 2:1. Mainly hydrogen to oxygen का ratio क्या है? 2:1. That is double the amount of the hydrogen and to oxygen. But it is not always so. Their general formula is CH2ON. So we can say that CnH2nOn is the general formula for the carbohydrates. The common term sugar, हम normally carbohydrates को sugar की form से represent करते हैं. But when we use the term sugar, it refers to the simple carbohydrates such as monosaccharide and disaccharide. When we use the term sugar, it refers to the simpler form of the carbohydrates which are monosaccharides and disaccharides. ये monosaccharides and disaccharides क्या है वो हम अभी देखेंगे. That taste sweet and are soluble in water. So when we use the term sugar, it means they are the simpler carbohydrates like disaccharides and monosaccharides जिनका taste sweet है and they are soluble in water. See students, this is a general classification of carbohydrates which are saccharides or sugar. Carbohydrates are broadly divided into three categories. Monosaccharides which are simple sugar, oligosaccharides which contain 2 to 10 sugars. यानी जब 2 से 10 monosaccharides साथ में होते हैं, then together it is called as the oligosaccharides. And the last one is the polysaccharides. Poly means many. यानी बहुत सारे sugar units, simple sugar units, यानी more than 10 sugar units जब साथ में होते हैं, then it is called as the polysaccharides. What are monosaccharides? Are the simple sugar. जब 2 to 10 monosaccharides साथ में होते हैं, then it is called as oligosaccharides. And when there are more than 10 polysaccharide unit, then when there are more than 10 monosaccharide units or simple sugar units, it is called as a polysaccharide. Now ये जो monosaccharides होते हैं उनमें जो functional group होता है वो दो होता है. Either it may be aldehyde. So if aldehyde is a functional group present, then it is called as aldose sugar. The example is glucose. And if the functional group present is ketone, then it is called as the ketose sugar. सो कौन सा फंक्शनल ग्रुप प्रेजेंट है, on that basis there are two forms. Either there may be aldose sugar which contains aldehyde as the functional group, or ketose sugar which consists of ketone as the functional group. Now ये monosaccharide में number of carbons will be either 3, 4, 5 or 6. Mainly the monosaccharide में कितने कार्बन एटम्स होते हैं, इट मे रेंज फ्रॉम 3 to 6. 6 से ज़्यादा भी हो सकता है, बट मैक्सिमम जो वाइडली यूज्ड शुगर्स है उसमें जो कार्बन एटम्स मैक्सिमम होते हैं वो 6 होते हैं. So if there are 3 carbons, it is called as a TRIOSE sugar. Example glyceraldehyde. 4 carbon, it is called Hetero sugar. Example erythrose. 5 carbon, it is called as Pentose sugar. Example ribose. And 6 carbon, it is called as HEXOSE sugar. Example glucose. So that is regarding the monosaccharide. Now oligosaccharide में क्या होता है, when 2 to 10 monosaccharides join होते हैं, then it is called as oligosaccharide. उसके different forms है disaccharide. Di means 2. So when 2 monosaccharides join, it is disaccharide. When 3 monosaccharides join, it is called trisaccharide. When 4 monosaccharides join, it is called as tetrasaccharide. And when 5 monosaccharides join, it is called as the pentasaccharides. द एग्जाम्पल, ये सब ओलिगोसैकेराइड्स में से जो बायोलॉजिकली इम्पोर्टेंट मोनो ओलिगोसैकेराइड्स है, दे आर द डाइसैकेराइड्स. आउट ऑफ ऑल द ओलिगोसैकेराइड्स, जो बायोलॉजिकली इम्पोर्टेंट ओलिगोसैकेराइड्स है, दे आर द डाइसैकेराइड्स. द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ डाइसैकेराइड्स आर माल्टोज, लैक्टोज एंड सुक्रोज. द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ Saccharide is raffinose, of tetrasaccharide is TRIOSE, and of pentasaccharide is verbascose. Now, lastly the polysaccharides. Poly means many. That is when more than 10 monosaccharides units are linked together, it is called as a polysaccharide. Now, these polysaccharides are further divided into two categories, Homo Polysaccharides and Hetero Polysaccharides. What are Homo Polysaccharides? Those polysaccharides which are made up of the similar monosaccharide. यानी all the monosaccharides are same. अगर ग्लूकोज का बना है तो वो पूरा जो भी पॉलीसेकेराइड है उसमें सिर्फ क्या रहेगा, ग्लूकोज. सो इफ दे आर मेड अप ऑफ अ सेम मोनोसेकेराइड यूनिट, इट इज कॉल्ड एज द homopolysaccharide. If a polysaccharide is made up of only one monosaccharide, only one type of the monosaccharide, then it is called as a homopolysaccharide. Hetero means different. Different means if it consists of different types of monosaccharide या उसमें शुगर का मॉडिफिकेशन होकर वो पॉलीसेकेराइड बना है, then such polysaccharides are called as heteropolysaccharides. We will see it in detail in this video later on. The examples of the homopolysaccharides are starch, glycogen, cellulose, chitin and inulin. And that of the heteropolysaccharides are peptidoglycan, hyaluronic acid, chondroitin sulfate, keratin sulfate, agar-agar, etc. So that is the general classification of carbohydrates. We will study in detail the monosaccharides, the disaccharides and the polysaccharides because these all are biologically important carbohydrates. So first of all, let us begin with the monosaccharides. So these monosaccharides are the simplest form of the carbohydrate with only one simple sugar molecule. So what are monosaccharides? They are the simplest carbohydrate कि जिसमें सिर्फ एक ही शुगर का मॉलिक्यूल रहता है. They contain an aldehyde or ketone group. Which group do they contain? Aldehyde, that is CHO. It is structurally written as C double bond OH. And this group is called as carbonyl and hydrogen के साथ अभी उसको बोलेंगे aldehyde. So The monosaccharides, they either contain an aldehyde or ketone group in their structure, and accordingly they are called as aldose sugar if they contain aldehyde group, or ketose sugar if they contain the ketone group. Any one carbon forms a double bond with oxygen to form a carbonyl group. कोई भी एक कार्बन कितने कार्बन हो सकते हैं? 3 कार्बन हो सकते हैं, 4 कार्बन हो सकते हैं, 5 कार्बन हो सकते हैं, एक्सेट्रा. So of all the carbons, one carbon will form a double bond with oxygen, and that carbon which forms the double bond with oxygen is called as the carbonyl group. जब कार्बन ऑक्सीजन के साथ डबल बॉन्ड के साथ ज्वाइन हो जाएगा, द फंक्शनल ग्रुप फॉर्म्ड इज कॉल्ड एज द कार्बोनिल ग्रुप. नाउ अगर ये कार्बोनिल ग्रुप टर्मिनल कार्बन पे है, से फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस आर द 3 कार्बन्स प्रेजेंट इन द शुगर, अभी any one of these will form a double bond with oxygen. What is it said? Of the all carbons, say for example 3 carbons है. Now ये 3 carbon में कोई भी एक carbon will form a double bond with oxygen. Suppose this happens with the terminal carbon. Terminal carbon यानी first carbon या last carbon. So अगर terminal carbon oxygen के साथ double bond बनाएगा, then it is an which sugar? It is called as an aldose sugar. ये sugar को क्या बोलेंगे? aldose. क्यों? क्योंकि कौन सा ग्रुप बन गया? CHO. But if this group occur at any carbon except the terminal one, अभी ये जो कार्बोनिल ग्रुप है वो टर्मिनल कार्बन के अलावा किधर और डबल बॉन्ड बनाता है? से फॉर एग्जांपल फर्स्ट और लास्ट पे नहीं बनाता है, वो दूसरे सेकंड कार्बन पे डबल बॉन्ड बना रहा है. तो ये वाला जो फंक्शनल ग्रुप बना, इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? कीटोन ग्रुप. व्हाट इज दिस फंक्शनल ग्रुप कॉल्ड एज? कीटोन. So that sugar is called as a ketose sugar. So if the carbonyl group is formed at the terminal carbon, it is called as the aldose sugar, and if it is formed at the any carbon except the terminal one, then it is called as the ketose sugar. Certain properties: they are sweet in taste, they are soluble in water and can pass through the cell membrane. यानी स्वीटर है, वाटर सोल्यूबल है, एंड दे कैन क्रॉस एनी ऑफ द सेल मेम्ब्रेन. दे कैन नॉट बी हाइड्रोलाइज टू सिंपलर फॉर्म. उसका फर्दर हाइड्रोलाइसिस या फर्दर ब्रेकडाउन पॉसिबल नहीं है. मोनोसैकेराइड्स आर क्लासिफाइड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ नंबर ऑफ कार्बन एटम्स इन देयर मॉलिक्यूल्स. So further classification of monosaccharides is done on the basis of the number of carbon contained in their structure. Biologically important monosaccharides are triose, pentose and hexose. So जो living organisms को monosaccharides important है, so mainly they are triose which will contain how many carbon? 3 carbon. Pentose which will contain 5 carbon, and hexose which will contain the 6 carbons. So first of all, the triose sugar. Now see, what is the general formula for the carbohydrates? It is C2H2ON, or simply we can say the general formula is CnH2nON. Now यहाँ पे number of carbon कितने हैं? 3 है. So N is equal to what? 3. So what is the formula for triose sugar? It is C3H6 and O3. So that is the general formula of the triose sugar. So what is triose sugar? They are the sugar which consist of how many carbons? 3 carbons. So glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyacetone are its example. So glyceraldehyde and trihydroxyacetone is an example of the triose sugar. The phosphoglyceraldehyde, short form is PGAL, which is synthesized during the dark reaction of photosynthesis, is an example of phosphate of aldotriose sugar. नाम से ही मालूम पड़ता है, अल्डिहाइड, अल्डिहाइड यानी अल्डिहाइड ग्रुप यानी अल्डोज शुगर. सो ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड इज अ ट्रायोज शुगर. इसका एक फॉर्म है दैट इज कॉल्ड एज फॉस्फोग्लिसरल्डिहाइड. दिस फॉस्फोग्लिसरल्डिहाइड इट इज फॉर्म ड्यूरिंग द डार्क रिएक्शन ऑफ फोटोसिंथेसिस. आप स्टडी करोगे फोटोसिंथेसिस डिटेल में, तो आप ये देखोगे कि the complete process of photosynthesis is divided into two stages, light reaction and dark reaction. So phosphoglyceraldehyde, it is synthesized during the dark phase of the photosynthesis, and it is an example of phosphate of aldose triose sugar. And dihydroxyacetone phosphate, that is DHAP, it is formed during the respiration, which you will study in detail, is an example of keto triose sugar. यानी उसमें कौन सा functional group है, ketone. See students, you will see that triose sugar. How many carbons? 3. So this is first carbon, this is second carbon, this is third carbon. Now यहाँ पे first जो carbon है, that will form the first carbon here will form the how many carbons? 3 carbons. The first carbon will form the double bond with oxygen. Remaining carbon पे OH आएगा ही. It is polyhydroxy alcohol. Right. Now, the remaining valency fill it with hydrogen. So, one carbon की valency क्या है? 4 है. So, here 1H, this is 1H, this is 1H and this is 1H. So, this is the example of the glyceraldehyde, which is an example of the aldotriose sugar. जबकि यहाँ पे in the second one, that is again there are how many carbons? 3 carbons. These 3 carbons, इसमें जो middle carbon है उसमें double bond O बनेगा. Remaining carbon पे एक एक OH ऐड करना है and then fulfill the valency by adding the hydrogen. Right? Here also there are 2 hydrogens. So this is an example of the keto triose sugar कि जहाँ पे C double bond O is formed at which carbon? The middle carbon. So that is the triose sugar. Then is the pentose sugar. Pentose यानी कितने carbon? 5 carbon. And its formula is C5H10O5. The deoxyribose sugar which occurs as a part of the structure of DNA. DNA में जो sugar होती है वो deoxyribose sugar होती है. And ribose sugar which is found in the structure of RNA and ATP. They are the examples of the aldopentose sugar. So deoxyribose sugar जो DNA में होता है, ribose sugar जो RNA में and ATP के अंदर होता है, ये तीनों 3 शुगर किसकी एग्जाम्पल्स है? aldopentose sugar. Aldopentose यानी 5 कार्बन and the carbonyl group occurs at the terminal one. यानी first कार्बन पे aldehyde group रहेगा. During the dark reaction of photosynthesis, a sugar involved in the constitution of the ribulose biphosphate. So ribulose biphosphate or diphosphate जिसका short form है RUDP or it is also called as RUBP if I say biphosphate. It is one and the same thing. Okay. Ribulose biphosphate बोलो या ribulose diphosphate. So this sugar it is formed at the time of the dark reaction of photosynthesis. उसमें जो ribulose होता है it is an example of the ketopentose sugar. See, we will see the structure. Here you can see the structures of 3 important sugars. One is the ribose, another one is deoxyribose and lastly it is ribulose. First of all, ribose sugar. कितने carbon? 5. This is first carbon, second, third, fourth and fifth. Okay. First carbon पे aldehyde group that is CHO group या C double bond OH. Remaining carbon पे हमें क्या ऐड करना है? OH. And then जो वैलेंसी बाकी होती है इसे किससे कंप्लीट करना है? हाइड्रोजन. नाउ डीऑक्सीराइबोज, उसका डिफरेंस राइबोज और डीऑक्सीराइबोज. डीऑक्सी रिमूवल ऑफ ऑक्सीजन. एक ऑक्सीजन जब राइबोज में से निकल जाएगा तो वो क्या बनेगा? डीऑक्सीराइबोज. So again these are the 5 carbons, first, second, third, fourth and fifth. First carbon पे CHO group, that is aldehyde group. Remaining carbon में OH group. Second carbon पे जो OH रहता है उसका ऑक्सीजन निकाल देंगे, यानी क्या बचा CHH, और बाकी की सब वैलेंसी हाइड्रोजन से फुलफिल करो, देन इट इज डीऑक्सीराइबोज. एंड द लास्ट वन इज अ कीटो पेंटोज शुगर, जहाँ पे कार्बोनिल ग्रुप कहाँ पे बनता है, सेकंड कार्बन पे. दिस इज अ सेकंड कार्बन, वहाँ पे C डबल बॉन्ड हो है, बाकी सब कार्बन पे एक एक OH and remaining valency completed by adding the hydrogen. So that is which sugar? Keto-pentose sugar. And finally the hexose sugar, whose formula is C6H12 and O6. They include glucose, fructose and galactose. These are the examples of the hexoses. Fructose, which is a fruit sugar, is a ketohexose found in juice of fruit. So हम फ्रूट में जो शुगर मिलती है that is the fructose. Now वो कौन सी शुगर है? कीटोहेक्सोज, यानी कौन सा फंक्शनल ग्रुप है? कीटोन. ग्लूकोज एंड गैलेक्टोज आर अल्डोहेक्सोसिस, यानी कि they contain the aldehyde as the functional group. Glucose is formed by the digestion of starch. Digestion of milk yields galactose and glucose, and these are the sugars which provides the energy to the body. Now here you can see the structure of the three hexoses: glucose, galactose and fructose. You can see that carbon number कितने हैं? 6 है. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now ग्लूकोज एंड फ्रुक्टोज ग्लूकोज एंड गैलेक्टोज, ये कैसी शुगर्स है? दे आर दी एल्डोज शुगर. एल्डोज शुगर है, यानी उसमें क्या होता है? टर्मिनल कार्बन पे CHO ग्रुप रहता है. सो दिस इज अ टर्मिनल कार्बन हैविंग द CHO और एल्डिहाइड ग्रुप. अभी रिमेनिंग वैलेंसी आपको किससे फुलफिल करनी है? OH से. यहाँ पे आप जो डिफरेंस देखोगे ग्लूकोज एंड गैलेक्टोज में, वो थर्ड कार्बन पे देखोगे. थर्ड कार्बन पे बेसिकली ये लीनियर स्ट्रक्चर है. ये शुगर रिंग फॉर्म में भी होती है, तो रिंग फॉर्म में OH की पोजीशन चेंज हो जाती है. Here you can see in glucose OH is present on the right side, whereas here it is formed on the left side. Otherwise they are isomers of each other. दोनों का स्ट्रक्चर कैसा है? कंपोनेंट सेम है. whereas fructose में सेकंड कार्बन पे C डबल बॉन्ड हो, बाकी वैलेंसी किससे फुलफिल करनी है? OH ग्रुप से. So this is regarding the structure of the hexoses. Now the disaccharide. अभी हमने ये देखा मोनोसैकेराइड. जब दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स जॉइन होते हैं तो क्या बनेगा? डाइसैकेराइड. A disaccharide molecule is formed when two molecules of monosaccharides, particularly two hexoses, are linked together releasing one molecule of water. Very important. जब दो monosaccharides join होते हैं तो क्या बनता है? Disaccharides. Now when we talk about monosaccharides के कितने टाइप्स है? It may be a triose, it may be a pentose, it may be a hexose, etc. So जब हम डाइसैकेराइड की बात करते हैं कि जहाँ पे दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स यूनिट जॉइन होते हैं, तो यहाँ पे मेनली जो दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स होते हैं वो कौन से होते हैं? हेक्सोस ही होते हैं. नॉर्मली इन द कंस्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द बायोलॉजिकली इम्पोर्टेंट डाइसैकेराइड्स, the two monosaccharides units involved are mainly the hexose sugar. And when two monosaccharides join, there will be the release of one molecule of water. जब monosaccharides join होते हैं, when two monosaccharides are attached with each other, a molecule of water will be released. It is a dehydration reaction. ओके जो दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स के बीच में बॉन्ड फॉर्म होता है, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द ग्लाइकोसिडिक बॉन्ड. एंड दिस ग्लाइकोसिडिक बॉन्ड इज फॉर्म बिटवीन the carbon 1 of the first monosaccharide with the carbon 4 of the second monosaccharide. It is called as the 1,4 linkage. The glycosidic bond is formed between the one carbon of one monosaccharide with the fourth carbon of the other monosaccharide unit. They are also sweet in taste and they are also soluble in water. Normally they are not diffusible through cell membrane. As it is, simply disaccharide cell membrane को क्रॉस नहीं कर सकते. पहले वो डाइसैकेराइड को हाइड्रोलाइज करना पड़ेगा दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स यूनिट में. डायरेक्टली डाइसैकेराइड सेल मेम्ब्रेन को क्रॉस नहीं करेंगी. उनको दो मोनोसैकेराइड्स में पहले ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा एंड देन दिस मोनोसैकेराइड्स कैन क्रॉस द सेल मेम्ब्रेन. That is, they cannot enter the cell directly. They have to split into the two monosaccharides unit and then they will cross the cell easily. अभी ये हाइड्रोलाइसिस यानी ये ब्रेक डाउन कैसे कर सकते हैं? हाउ कैन वी ब्रेक डाउन अ डाइसैकेराइड यूनिट? So they can be hydrolyzed to yield their saccharin building blocks by boiling with dilute acid. So by dilution in the by boiling in the dilute acid, we can hydrolyze the disaccharide or on reacting them with the appropriate enzymes. अगर डाइसैकेराइड्स को एंजाइम्स के साथ रिएक्ट करेंगे तो भी ये इजीली ब्रेक डाउन हो जाएंगे इनटू द मोनोसैकेराइड यूनिट. Maltose, which is a malt sugar, sucrose, which is called as the cane or table sugar, and lactose, which is a milk sugar, are the examples of the disaccharides. Okay, so these are the three biologically important disaccharides: maltose, sucrose and lactose. Maltose का hydrolysis यानी the breakdown of maltose yields two molecules of glucose, which means जब दो ग्लूकोज मॉलिक्यूल ज्वाइन होता है तो माल्टोज बनता है. हाइड्रोलाइसिस ऑफ सुक्रोज यानी ब्रेकडाउन ऑफ सुक्रोज रिजल्ट्स ग्लूकोज एंड फ्रुक्टोज एंड दैट ऑफ लैक्टोज yields ग्लूकोज एंड गैलेक्टोज. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्टूडेंट. See students, the formation of maltose. Maltose is formed by the combination of two molecules of glucose. Now ये जो ग्लूकोज का स्ट्रक्चर है वो रिंग फॉर्म में है. इट इज़ इन विच फॉर्म? रिंग फॉर्म. ये कितनी रिंग है, कितने कॉर्नर्स है ये रिंग में? 6 कॉर्नर्स. ये 6 रिंग स्ट्रक्चर में 5 कॉर्नर्स आर ऑक्यूपाइड बाय ऑक्सीजन. ये 5 कॉर्नर्स आर ऑक्यूपाइड बाय कार्बन. सी दिस इज कार्बन 1, ये भी कार्बन 2 है, दिस इज कार्बन 3, दिस इज कार्बन 4, this is carbon 5 and this is carbon 6 and एक जो कॉर्नर है वो किससे ऑक्यूपाई हो जाता है? ऑक्सीजन. ओके, अभी रिमेनिंग कार्बन पे क्या होता है? OH ग्रुप, OH ग्रुप, यहाँ पे भी OH ग्रुप, OH ग्रुप एंड दिस इज CH2OH. राइट. सो एक ग्लूकोज का फर्स्ट कार्बन का OH रिएक्ट होता है दूसरे ग्लूकोज का. So this is C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 and C6. So दूसरे ग्लूकोज का फोर्थ कार्बन का OH ये क्या बनाते हैं? बॉन्ड बनाते हैं by release of one molecule of water. See this is the removal of water. एक कार्बन का हाइड्रोजन और एक शुगर का OH रिमूव हो गया and the bond is 1,4 glycosidic bond. And this is the structure of the maltose. Release of the water molecule is done. Okay. So this is the structure of the, or this is how a glycosidic bond is formed by joining the two molecule of glucose, releasing or forming the maltose molecule, and there will be the release of the water. Now lastly the polysaccharides. Poly means many. यानी when more than 10 when more than 10 monosaccharides are joined, it forms a polysaccharide. These are made of hundreds of monosaccharides unit. Polysaccharides are also called as glycans. What are they also called as? They are also called as glycans. When a large number of monosaccharides unit becomes joined through the glycosidic bond and it forms a long chain, then the chain is called as a polysaccharide. So when many monosaccharides units are joined through glycosidic bond, which results in the formation of chain, then that chain is called as a polysaccharide. Now pentose polysaccharide, pentose यानी those polysaccharides which are made up of the pentose sugar, उसमें जो monosaccharides होगी वो कौन सी sugars होगी? Pentose sugar. Then such polysaccharides are called as pentosanes. And if a polysaccharide is made up of a hexose monosaccharide, यानी वो polysaccharide में जो monosaccharides होती है वो hexose sugar रहेगी, then such polysaccharides are called as the hexanes. So it may be pentosanes or it may be hexanes. They are not sweet in taste and they are not soluble in water. The various known forms of the polysaccharides are starch, glycogen, cellulose, chitin, lignin, etc. The starch is made up of unbranched polysaccharide chain of glucose unit. Okay, starch is a polysaccharide which is made up of the glucose units, and ये जो glucose होते हैं वो unbranched होते हैं. So basically we can say it is a linear chain of a glucose. That linear or unbranched chain of the glucose is called as the amylose. Little amount में branched polysaccharide chain of glucose also occur in little amount. So that is called as amylopectin. Very, very important. Unbranched chain of the glucose, it is called as the polysaccharides and amylose, and branched chain of the glucose, it is called as the amylopectin. So starch is made up of both unbranched chain of the polysaccharide called amylose and little amount also consists of branched chain of the glucose which is called as amylopectin. Plants, they store the food in the form of the starch. Branched polysaccharide chain of glucose occur in the constitution of glycogen which are called as amylopectin chain. Okay, another example of the polysaccharide is glycogen. अभी ये glycogen किसका बना है? Branch chain of the glucose, and this branch chain of the glucose are called as amylopectin. In animals, the food is stored as the glycogen. Cellulose is also made up of polysaccharide chain of glucose and is a structural component of the plant cell wall. So cellulose, it is also a polysaccharide and it is a polysaccharide of glucose and it is present in the cell wall. See students, this is the structure of the starch and this is the structure. यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो कि ये linear chain है, okay? ये कोई भी branching नहीं है, so that is called as amylose. यहाँ पे आप branching देख सकते हो, so this branch chain is called as amylopectin. This is a linear chain, amylose. ये linear chain के साथ यहाँ पे आप branching देख सकते हो, that is called as the amylopectin. Now polysaccharides are further divided into two categories, Homo Polysaccharide and Hetero Polysaccharide. So what are Homo Polysaccharide? Those polysaccharide which are made up of same monosaccharide, it is called as a Homo Polysaccharide, and those polysaccharides which are made up of modified molecules of monosaccharide, यानी monosaccharide में certain modifications हुए हैं या more than one type of the monosaccharide, then they are called as the hetero polysaccharide. So polysaccharide made up of the same type of the monosaccharide are called as Homo Polysaccharide, and those which are made up of the modified monosaccharide unit or it contains more than one type of the monosaccharide, then they are called as the hetero polysaccharide. The acid insoluble pellet has the polysaccharide as another class of macromolecules. So basically हमने जब वो experiment study किया था biochemical analysis का, so acid insoluble fraction, it consists of the, where are polysaccharides present? So they are present in the acid insoluble fraction. They are the long chains of sugar. They are threads, literally a cotton thread containing different monosaccharides as the building blocks. Cellulose is a polymeric polysaccharide consisting of only one type of the monosaccharide, that is glucose. So cellulose is called as a homopolymer. Homo means same. So it is made up of, पूरा जो cellulose है उसमें सिर्फ क्या होगा, ग्लूकोज होगा, ग्लूकोज के अलावा कुछ भी नहीं होगा. So cellulose is a polysaccharide which is a homopolymer made up of only the glucose molecule. Starch is a variant of this but present as a storehouse of energy in plant tissue. So cellulose का एक variant है starch, but starch is basically a reserve food of the plant. Animals have another variant called as glycogen. Yani glycogen is also a homopolymer of the glucose only. Inulin is a polymer of fructose. It is a homopolymer, but it is made up of which monosaccharide? It is made up of the fructose. In a polysaccharide chain, say for example glycogen, the right end is called as the reducing end and the left end is called as a non-reducing end. Okay, glycogen की chain की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो एक एंड को बोलते हैं reducing end and the other end is called as a non-reducing end. We will see what is that. Now that carbon which has free aldehyde or ketone group is called as reducing. Okay, जो कार्बन पे फ्री अल्डिहाइड या कीटोन ग्रुप है, फ्री अल्डिहाइड या कीटोन ग्रुप यानी वो अल्डिहाइड या कीटोन ने किसी और के साथ ज्वाइन नहीं किया है. So that carbon is called as a reducing carbon, and carbon not having the free aldehyde or ketone group is called as a non-reducing. Those sugars के जिसमें उसका अल्डिहाइड या कीटोन ग्रुप फ्री नहीं है यानी किसी के साथ लिंक हुआ है, that is called as a non-reducing sugar. Now जो ग्लाइकोजन है, it have alpha 1,4 linkage with the branches and 1,6 linkage. Okay, so it have which branch, जो branches होते हैं उसमें 1,4 linkage होता है. Now the terminal carbon have no free aldehyde or ketone group, hence it is called as a non-reducing end. उसका जो terminal carbon है वहाँ पे उसके पास फ्री अल्डिहाइड या कीटोन ग्रुप नहीं है, यानी उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं, नॉन रिड्यूसिंग एंड. वेरेज द कार्बन वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट ग्लूकोज विच इज प्रेजेंट इन द कोर इज रिड्यूसिंग एंड. ओके, उसका जो फर्स्ट कार्बन है जिसका ग्लूकोज का जो फर्स्ट कार्बन है उसका जो ग्रुप है, so carbon 1 of the first glucose is reducing end. जो फर्स्ट ग्लूकोज है उसका जो पहला कार्बन है वो क्या है, उसका अल्डिहाइड ग्रुप फ्री है and that is called as a reducing end. So हम बोल सकते हैं कि पॉलीसेकेराइड में one end is a non-reducing end and other is a reducing end. It has branches as shown in the form of the cartoon. उसका एक स्ट्रक्चर दिया है पीछे, तो हम देखेंगे कि ग्लाइकोजन में ब्रांचेस होते हैं. हमने देखा ब्रांच चेन्स आर कॉल्ड एज एमाइलोपेक्टिन. स्टार्च फॉर्म्स अ हेलिकल सेकेंडरी स्ट्रक्चर. स्टार्च का जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है वो हेलिकल स्ट्रक्चर होता है. स्टार्च कैन होल्ड आयोडीन मॉलिक्यूल इन इट्स हेलिकल पोर्शन and that is why iodine test is used to detect the presence of the starch. So starch is occurring in the helical form and ये helical portion में क्या store हो सकता है, iodine molecule. The starch I2 is blue in color. Cellulose does not contain complex helices and hence it cannot hold I2. Okay, cellulose is also the form of polymer of glucose, लेकिन उसमें हेलिकल स्ट्रक्चर नहीं बनता है एंड हेलिकल स्ट्रक्चर नहीं बनता है इसीलिए वो आयोडीन को स्टोर नहीं कर सकता है एंड एज इट कैन नॉट होल्ड द आयोडीन इट इज़ नॉट ब्लू इन कलर. प्लांट सेल वॉल्स आर मेड अप ऑफ सेल्यूलोज. पेपर मेड फ्रॉम प्लांट पल्प एंड कॉटन फाइबर इज सेल्यूलोसिक. There are more complex polysaccharides in nature also. They have the building block amino sugars and chemically modified sugars. Okay. जो कॉम्प्लेक्स पॉलीसेकेराइड्स होते हैं उसमें सिंपल मोनोसेकेराइड्स नहीं होती है, उनमें जो शुगर्स होती है वो एमाइनो शुगर्स होती है, यानी वन ऑफ द हाइड्रोजन इज रिप्लेस्ड बाय NH2 ग्रुप एंड आर केमिकली मॉडिफाइड. ये मॉडिफाइड शुगर्स बोलते हैं. एग्जाम्पल ग्लूकोजोमाइन एंड एसिटाइल ग्लूकोजेमाइन एक्सेट्रा. The exoskeleton of arthropods, they have the complex polysaccharide called chitin, and this complex polysaccharides are called as heteropolymers or heteropolysaccharides. So those polysaccharides के जिसमें modified sugars present है या उनका building blocks amino sugars है, then they are called as the heteropolymers. See students, this is a diagrammatic cartoon of the glycogen. ये linear chain है and यहाँ पे उसका branches है. So these are the branches of the glycogen. So that is regarding the carbohydrates. Now lastly we will study the biological importance of carbohydrates. They play the important role in the metabolism of cell and constitution of the tissues. Ribose and deoxyribose pentose sugar are the structural components of RNA and DNA respectively. राइबोज में RNA होता है, डीऑक्सीराइबोज में DNA में होता है डीऑक्सीराइबोज. कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स आर द मेन सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी इन लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स. कोई भी ऑर्गेनिजम्स में जो मेन एनर्जी गिविंग कंपोनेंट है वो कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स है. ओके, कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स में भी जो वाइडली यूज सबस्ट्रेट है वो ग्लूकोज है, यानी मैक्सिमम कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स जो यूज़ होते हैं एनर्जी प्रोडक्शन में वो ग्लूकोज है. So glucose is widely used in respiration. The energy released through its oxidation meets the energy requirements of the organism. Carbohydrates such as cellulose form the plant cell wall. Starch serves as a stored food in plant while glycogen serves as a reserve food in animals. So cellulose is present in plant cell wall, starch is a reserve food in plant and glycogen is a reserve food in animals. So that is regarding the carbohydrates. I end my lecture here. In next lecture, we will deal with the next biomolecules that are nucleic acids. Thank you students.